How far would a person go to protect the truth when speaking it might destroy their life forever? The question hangs like a ghost in the icy air the morning the new year dawns over Fort Laramie. Snow lies thick across the Wyoming territory, a hard white silence stretching toward the mountains, touching every rooftop, every fence post, every boot print hardened into the frozen ground. The soldiers move quietly, their breath clouding in the bitter cold. Life continues, but something feels strained, tense, as if the winter itself is holding its breath. Evelyn Hart stands in the kitchen doorway for a moment longer than she should, watching the light grow pale across the parade ground. She is slight, almost fragile, wrapped in a worn shawl. The long scar that runs from her cheek down along her jaw glows faintly in the morning cold, the only harsh line on an otherwise soft and luminous face. She is beautiful in a way that looks breakable, and yet there is a steadiness in her eyes, something stronger than the body that holds it. She has learned how to be silent. She has learned how to disappear. But this morning, disappearing will no longer be an option. Samuel Carter rides into the fort just after sunup, his horse coated in frost, his movements calm and sure. He is not a loud man. His strength lies in the quiet way he stands, the way he looks at people as if he weighs truth before he answers. He brings with him what he has earned honestly, 53 pelts, each one the product of long days in the wild. He expects a fair exchange, nothing more, but fairness depends on men who value it, and Marcus Blackwell does not. Blackwell is the kind of man who smiles without warmth. His wealth runs through the fort like a river of influence, buying obedience wordlessly. He records only 38 pelts in his ledger, then shuts the book with a snap that sounds final. Samuel's jaw tightens. He speaks simply, quietly, refusing to back down. That is when Blackwell turns accusation into a weapon. Theft, fraud, slander. The words echo through the air like distant gunfire. Soldiers gather. Eyes turn. The new year no longer feels hopeful. Captain Jonathan Mercer hears the dispute and tries to keep order, but supply routes depend on Blackwell. Money leans on authority. Authority bends. By the time the orders are spoken, Samuel is disarmed, held under guard, and the truth already feels buried beneath the snow. Across the yard, Evelyn watches everything, and fear curls inside her chest. She knows. She remembers the night weeks earlier when she worked late in the kitchen, the fire low, the walls thin enough to carry voices. She remembers Marcus Blackwell and Nathan Price, whispering like men who believe no one hears them. Hidden ledgers, skimmed pelts, quiet profit, a system built on theft. And she remembers standing there, frozen not by cold, but by reality. The knowledge that truth is dangerous. That night, she chose silence. This morning, silence begins to feel like complicity. Yet, who would believe a fragile kitchen girl with a scar instead of a merchant whose gold supports the fort? The answer seems obvious, and still, her heart refuses to rest. Samuel does not look toward her, does not call for help or sympathy. But she remembers how he once looked at her like a person instead of a shadow, how he never stared at the scar or commented on her thinness, or spoke to her as if she were less. Respect is a simple gift, but it is the rarest kind she has ever received. As Samuel is escorted away, the winter wind stings Evelyn's face, and the world feels suddenly smaller, colder, and sharper. The gossip begins almost immediately. Whispers spread through the mess hall and washing room. Some call Samuel reckless. Some say he finally got caught. Some shrug and say, Blackwell is always right. The dangerous thing about lies is how easily they take root when power waters them. Evelyn lowers her head and works. Bread must still be baked. Meals must still be served. Life cruelly goes on, but her thoughts do not quiet. They turn and turn like a wheel in deep mud. At night, she lies awake in the narrow cot, listening to the wind howl against the shutters. Her hand rests against her cheek, feeling the raised line of the scar. She remembers every moment it changed her life, how people stopped seeing her beauty and began seeing only the mark. She learned then that the world rarely listens to women like her. And yet, the truth still burns. Samuel waits in confinement while Blackwell moves freely, calm and assured. Captain Mercer signs orders with a troubled brow. Nathan Price keeps his eyes down and his mouth closed. And Evelyn, the invisible woman, carries the secret no one else will say aloud. With every passing hour, the question presses deeper into her chest. If she remains silent, does that make her guilty too? The answer frightens her even more than Blackwell does. She watches the sky grow heavier with snow again. She watches soldiers walk past without noticing her. She watches injustice tighten its hold like winter around the frozen earth. Somewhere inside her, beneath the fear and the years of silence, something begins to rise. Not anger, not pride. Something steadier. Something like resolve. Truth does not disappear simply because the world refuses to hear it. And Evelyn Hart is beginning to understand that neither can she. The tribunal is announced 2 days later, as if justice were something ordinary, scheduled between supply tallies and patrol reports. But nothing about that morning feels ordinary. The sky is flat and gray, the kind that presses downward, trapping every sound and thought beneath it. Soldiers gather in the parade ground, boots grinding against frozen earth. Merchants stand near the edges, their faces guarded, and in the center stands Samuel Carter, unarmed, straight-backed, surrounded by authority that does not belong to him. Evelyn watches from the crowd, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. Her heart beats too loud, too fast, as though it might betray her before she even opens her mouth. She tells herself she will remain silent, that this is not her place, that speaking will change everything. But the more she repeats it, the less it sounds like truth. Captain Jonathan Mercer calls the assembly to order, his voice carrying the formality of a man trying to hold balance on thinning ice. He explains the accusation. He gives Samuel the chance to answer. Samuel's voice is steady. He does not plead. He does not shout. He simply tells the truth. He brought 53 pelts, and only 38 were recorded. His eyes are calm. His dignity is intact. He has nothing else to offer. Then Marcus Blackwell steps forward. His coat is fine, his gloves of good leather, his posture that of a man who has always been believed. His tone is smooth, confident, almost kind, the way a snake might speak if gifted a human voice. He claims honesty. He claims order. He claims Samuel is mistaken, or lying, or perhaps desperate. His words weave themselves into the air, slow and heavy, and the crowd begins to lean toward him, the way people always lean toward wealth when they don't know where else to stand. Evelyn feels sick. Nathan Price stands near Blackwell, head bowed, eyes avoiding contact. She knows that look. The look of a man who has chosen silence because it pays better than truth. Captain Mercer hesitates. He looks at the ledger. He looks at Blackwell. He looks at Samuel. And Evelyn understands something painful. The truth is losing. Because truth, by itself, is small when power is speaking. The captain sighs and begins to speak, already leaning toward judgment, already preparing to punish the wrong man. That is when Evelyn steps forward. She does not remember deciding to do it. One moment she is standing in the crowd, trembling and hidden. The next, she is out in the open, the wind biting her face, every eye turning toward the scar on her cheek as if dragged there by instinct. Her voice shakes at first, then steadies. She tells them what she heard weeks earlier, Blackwell whispering in the quiet with Nathan Price, discussing extra ledgers, hidden pelts, stolen profits. Every word feels like crossing a frozen river, not knowing if the ice will break beneath her. Blackwell laughs, but there is nothing warm in it. He calls her confused. He calls her fragile. He hints she seeks attention. Nathan stares at the ground. The crowd shifts, uncomfortable, unsure. Captain Mercer frowns, trapped between duty and fear, weighing the risk of angering the man who feeds his soldiers. Evelyn feels exposed. But she does not retreat. She stands there, thin, pale, scarred, and she refuses to disappear. Her words do not grow louder, they simply grow clearer. Silence breaks differently this time. Not with shouting, not with force, but with steady certainty. If she is lying, let them search. If she is mistaken, nothing will be found. If Blackwell is honest, he has nothing to fear. The air changes. Suspicion is a living thing, and for the first time, it turns toward the merchant instead of the trapper. Captain Mercer is pale when he finally orders the search. Nathan nearly drops the keys as he unlocks the storage room. Lieutenant Daniel Brooks goes inside with 2 soldiers. Minutes pass. No one speaks. Then he returns, carrying ledgers that do not match the official books. Behind him, soldiers drag out bundles of pelts, more than 200 in all, hidden behind false walls and crates. The fort seems to exhale in one shocked breath. The truth is not a whisper anymore. It is undeniable. Blackwell protests, but his voice cracks at the edges. His influence slips away like water through clenched hands. The soldiers seize him, and his polished composure shatters. Samuel is released. Captain Mercer apologizes, quietly, almost painfully, as though the word itself has weight. The crowd no longer looks at Evelyn as if she were invisible. Now they look at her differently. Some with awe, some with anger, some with fear. Her scar has not changed, but its meaning has. She is no longer silent, and that makes her dangerous. Samuel meets her gaze across the courtyard. He does not rush forward. He does not speak loudly. He simply bows his head once, a gesture of gratitude that feels deeper than applause. But victory is never simple. The whispers begin again, sharper this time. How dare she accuse a man of standing? Who put such ideas in her head? Does a kitchen girl have any right to disrupt order? And in those whispers, Evelyn hears the shape of what is coming. Consequences that do not vanish just because the truth has been revealed. That night, the wind grows colder. Lamps burn late in officers' quarters. Men argue in low tones, and Evelyn lies awake knowing that once a person has chosen to step into the center of the room, they can never return fully to the shadows again. She has saved a man. She has exposed a thief. And in doing so, she has painted a target on her own fragile, luminous life. Still, as the darkness deepens, one thought remains unbroken inside her. She did not run. Not this time. Truth finally has a voice, and it sounds like hers. The dismissal comes quietly, without ceremony, as if erasing a life could be done with a single slip of folded paper. Evelyn receives the letter in the gray chill of morning, her hands trembling as she reads the words that accuse her of disrupting the normal order of the fort. There is no mention of truth, no mention of courage, only order, and the price of disturbing it. Mrs. Agnes Turner stands beside her, lips pressed tight, speaking with the blunt honesty of a woman who understands survival better than fairness. The order did not come from her. It came from men who fear the consequences of crossing wealth. Captain Mercer apologizes as well, but his voice sounds weary, like a man who has already accepted the limits of his own spine. He offers a small sum for travel, a polite way of saying farewell. Evelyn nods, because arguing will not change anything. She has lived long enough to know when a door has been locked from the other side. That night, when the kitchen grows quiet and the last pans are scrubbed clean, the knock on the door does not surprise her. Somehow, she already knows it will be Samuel. He stands in the lamplight like a figure cut from winter itself, quiet, steady, grateful. He thanks her simply, without flourishes or speeches. Then he speaks of the mountains, of a cabin built with his own hands, of a life removed from the noise of men who think their money shapes the world. He does not speak of protection like something he will place around her. Instead, he speaks of partnership, of work shared equally, of safety earned together. His words are not romantic on the surface, but there is something in the way he says her name, Evelyn, that makes the world soften for a moment. She pauses. Leaving means freedom, but it also means scandal, whispers, isolation. Yet staying means danger, and worse, invisibility. For the first time in years, someone is not trying to use her silence. Someone is offering her a choice. She accepts. Dawn breaks clear and bitter when they ride out. Mrs. Turner presses bread and wages into Evelyn's hands with a rare softness, then turns away quickly, as if kindness must remain unseen. The road north climbs through snow-laden pines. The air smells sharp and clean, biting at exposed skin. Samuel does not rush her. When the terrain grows steep, he slows. When the wind cuts too hard, he checks on her. Evelyn's body is frail, and by the time the sun dips low, her muscles ache with a deep, trembling fatigue. Yet something inside her feels lighter than it has in years. For the first time, she is not trapped behind walls. The cabin reveals itself at last through the trees, a rough log structure tucked into the hillside, with smoke curling gently from the chimney. It is not grand, it is not perfect, but it looks like a place built honestly, piece by piece, by a man who expects to face storms. Inside, it is warm. Fire crackles softly. A table bears the marks of long use. Everything smells of wood smoke and pine. Evelyn stands there, unsure of where to place her hands, unsure of what label the world would give this moment. Samuel simply says, "This is home." And for once, the word does not sound fragile. The first days are difficult. Her thin body rebels against the cold. The work is constant. Chopping kindling, hauling water, tending fire, preparing what little food they have. Samuel teaches patiently. He shows her how to manage the rifle, not as a toy or weapon of pride, but as a tool that means they will see tomorrow. He teaches her the forest the way other men teach numbers, where shadows hold danger, where tracks tell stories, where silence means everything. At night, the wind whistles around the cabin, pressing against the walls, reminding them that the world is always larger than human fears. They sit across from each other at the wooden table, the firelight warming their faces, shadows softening the scar on her cheek into something almost gentle. They do not speak of love. They do not speak of the future. But trust begins to grow like a small flame, steady and bright. Evelyn learns more than survival. She learns to inhabit her own presence. When she carries water, her steps become sure. When she cuts cloth for binding pelts, her hands move with confidence. Each small task whispers the same truth. She belongs here, not as a guest, not as charity, as an equal. Samuel speaks little of the past, but some nights he tells stories of riding alone through canyons, of winters survived by patience and instinct. He admits he had begun to believe solitude was the only honest way to live. Then she had stepped out of a silent crowd and changed the course of his life with a single act of courage. Evelyn listens, quietly absorbing the strange tenderness hidden under his calm exterior. When at last she speaks of her own scar, the accident, the cold stares, the cruel way beauty becomes a burden when marked, Samuel does not flinch. He does not offer pity. He simply accepts the truth as it stands. And to Evelyn, that acceptance feels like breathing for the first time in years. Winter deepens. Snow thickens around the cabin until the world beyond feels distant and unreal. They move through days bound by rhythm, morning fire, work, preparation, quiet meals, long evenings in soft lamplight. The unspoken bond between them settles naturally, without declaration. It is not grand or dramatic. It is steady, rooted, resilient, like the mountains themselves. And within that quiet, Evelyn grows stronger. Her cheeks warm with color. Her eyes no longer hold constant worry. She laughs once, unexpectedly, at Samuel's dry remark about a stubborn mule he once traded. And the sound startles even her. Safety does not erase memory. Sometimes, as the wind sighs through the pines, she remembers the tribunal, the anger in certain eyes, the way truth painted her as dangerous. But here, danger feels distant. Here, the world listens differently. Here, her voice has a home, and though neither of them speaks it yet, something like love has begun to take root. Fragile at first, but growing stronger with every passing winter day. Nourished not by promises or poetry, but by shared survival, mutual respect, and the simple fact of choosing each other in a world that had once offered neither of them a place. Winter loosens its grip slowly, like a reluctant hand releasing what it has held too long. The snow melts in seams and rivulets, revealing damp earth, pine needles, and the first stubborn signs of life. In the cabin, the rhythm of survival has softened into something warmer, quieter, almost peaceful. Evelyn wakes each morning not with dread, but with purpose. She tends the fire, prepares simple meals, and works beside Samuel with the calm certainty of someone who finally belongs somewhere in the world. Their lives are modest, yet they are rich in ways the fort could never measure. Evenings are their truest time. The fire settles into a low glow, shadows resting gently along the walls. Samuel speaks more now, not much, never extravagantly, but honestly. And that honesty feels like a gift. Evelyn listens, her thin frame wrapped in a shawl, her scar catching firelight like a memory that has finally softened its hold on her. The unspoken feeling between them grows steadier, deeper. It does not shout. It simply exists. But peace, like winter ice, is fragile. News arrives the way it always does in the wilderness. Quietly, on the back of a passing traveler, carried in half-whispered sentences. Marcus Blackwell's allies have not accepted his fall. Some believe he was framed. Some simply resent seeing a powerful man brought low by the word of a woman they once ignored. And there are murmurs, dangerous ones, that Evelyn perjured herself, that the tribunal was a mockery, that charges may be brought. Samuel listens without expression while the traveler speaks. When the door closes and silence returns, the cabin feels smaller. The firelight flickers with unease. Evelyn says nothing at first. Her hands are steady, but her stomach twists in that old familiar way. The feeling of being judged before she has even spoken. Samuel meets her gaze. His voice is calm, but his eyes hold a question. They could disappear deeper into the mountains. The wilderness is wide. Tracks can be erased. Names can become echoes swallowed by the trees. She would be safe, perhaps, hidden, forgotten. But Evelyn knows something she did not know before. She can no longer bear the weight of silence. Hiding would make the lie true. And the truth is all she has. So she answers softly but firmly. They must go back. Samuel nods once, not as a man defeated, but as a man who has chosen his path before the world even asks it of him. He does not lecture. He does not try to change her mind. Instead, he begins preparing the horses. The journey back to Fort Laramie feels different than the one that brought them here. The sky is brighter now. The snow has pulled back from the land, but the air still carries a faint chill, the kind that reminds a person to be cautious. Each mile brings the past closer. Each mile reminds Evelyn of all she left behind, the whispers, the scorn, the weight of being watched. Yet she sits straighter in the saddle than before. Fear still lives inside her, but it no longer rules her. By the time the fort's walls rise in the distance, the knot in her chest has tightened. She smells smoke from cooking fires. She hears distant commands, and it feels, for a moment, as if time has folded back upon itself. Only now, she is not alone. Captain Jonathan Mercer receives them with tired eyes and a guarded tone. He explains, measured and formal, that the territorial prosecutor has been asked to re-examine the testimony. There are wealthy voices insisting that Evelyn lied to ruin a good man's livelihood. The word perjury is spoken without raising its volume, yet it weighs heavily in the air. Prosecutor William Hayes is a careful man, the kind who believes in evidence even when politics presses against his back. He interviews Evelyn in a small office, sunlight slanting through dusty glass. highlighting particles that drift between them like restless thoughts. His questions are precise. Sometimes they are sharp, but they are not cruel. Evelyn answers each one clearly. Her voice does not waver. Her scar is visible. Her thin shoulders are visible. But more than anything, her certainty is visible. Nathan Price is brought in separately. For the first time, the weight of guilt begins to bend his posture. His silence has protected no one, not even himself. Little by little, cracks appear in the false certainty others have built. Ledger discrepancies reappear under careful review. Storage records do not align with shipments. The truth, like spring thaw, seeps out through every seam. Days pass slowly, stretching into nights of quiet worry. Evelyn walks the yard sometimes, feeling eyes on her. Some look at her with gratitude, some with suspicion. Samuel remains close, not hovering, not guarding, just present. A steady anchor in a place that once drowned her. Finally, the decision is made. There will be no charges. Her testimony stands. The truth remains. The words are delivered plainly, without ceremony, but to Evelyn they feel like air-filling lungs starved for breath. Captain Mercer looks relieved in a way he does not fully show. Prosecutor Hayes shakes her hand, not as a courtesy, but as acknowledgement. Outside, the wind shifts. For the first time since the whispers began, the fort feels less like a threat and more like a fading chapter of a life she has already outgrown. As they prepare to leave once more, Samuel pauses beside her. He does not make promises or grand declarations. Instead, he offers a simple statement that wherever she chooses to stand, he will stand beside her. And for Evelyn, that is enough. They ride away as the sky turns gold along the horizon. The fort grows smaller behind them, swallowed slowly by distance and the sweep of the land. Ahead lies the mountains, wild, unpredictable, and honest. A place where truth does not need approval to exist. Evelyn feels lighter, not because the world has changed, but because she has. The woman who fled here once in fear now returns with something far stronger than defiance, a quiet, unbreakable certainty of who she is and what her voice is worth. And beside her rides the man who chose to believe her long before anyone else did. The shadows have returned and passed over them. What remains is not fear, but the beginning of something that looks very much like love, steady and enduring, rooted deep as the pines that wait for them beyond the ridge. The mountains receive them as if they had merely stepped out for a moment and returned home before the light faded. Wind sighs through the pines, the last threads of winter clinging stubbornly to the shaded valleys. Evelyn watches the horizon as they ride, and something in her chest loosens, a slow untying of knots that have held for far too many years. She is not the same woman who fled the fort in fear, nor is Samuel the solitary figure who once believed silence was the safest shield. They ride side by side now, not out of necessity, but choice. The cabin stands where it always has, rooted into the hillside, its chimney offering a thin ribbon of smoke. When they step inside, nothing has changed, and yet everything has. The table still bears its scars, the fire still greets them with soft warmth, but the air carries a deep, unspoken peace. They unpack slowly, deliberately, as if honoring the lives that carried them here. Days settle into rhythm once more, but the rhythm has a different tone now. There is relief beneath it, gratitude, the kind that comes only after a trial weathered honestly. Samuel returns to his traps with renewed steadiness, though he does not travel quite as far or quite as long as before. He has learned that solitude is a choice, not a destiny. Evelyn tends the cabin with the same quiet care as ever, but there is strength in her movements now, not hesitation. When she goes to the stream for water, she feels the ground beneath her boots as something that belongs to her as much as it belongs to the earth. Word spreads slowly, carried by trappers, travelers, passing riders who stop for warmth and a cup of strong coffee. The story reaches far beyond the fort. A thin woman with a scar spoke truth when silence would have been safer. A mountain man stood beside her. Justice, for once, did not crumble under pressure. Some hear it as warning, others hear it as hope. Every so often, a stranger arrives at their door. A woman with tired eyes, a young man crushed by debt, a loner who no longer trusts his own voice. They do not stay forever, but they stay long enough to remember who they are. Samuel never asks questions he does not need answered. Evelyn never forces confessions. Instead, she offers kindness the way some people offer bread, simply without ceremony. And little by little, the cabin becomes a quiet refuge at the edge of the world. Not famous, not grand, but known among those who have once felt unseen. One evening, as the sky settles into deep indigo and the fire paints gold across the floor, Samuel places a small wooden board on the table. He carved it himself over the winter, the letters steady and honest. Carter and Hart. Trappers. Evelyn runs her fingers over the grooves. The name is not just a sign. It is acknowledgement of partnership, of shared labor, of the equal place she now holds in the world. He does not speak of love that night. He does not need to. The word has already been written across every moment they have survived together. Eventually, love finds its voice with a simplicity that feels truer than any grand declaration. A quiet question, a soft yes. No audience, no ceremony beyond a legal signature in town and a winter sky full of stars on the ride home. Evelyn takes his name, not because she must, but because it feels like placing her hand in his and choosing the same road. Years pass with the patience of weather. They work, they struggle, they laugh sometimes, surprising themselves. The scar on Evelyn's face remains, a pale line across delicate skin, but it no longer defines her. It is a mark of survival, not shame. Samuel grows a bit grayer around the temples. His hands stay steady. His eyes soften whenever he looks at her, as though the world finally learned how to be kind to both of them at once. And then, one spring, a young woman arrives at their door, breathless, clutching a small bundle of clothes, eyes wide with fear. She speaks of injustice, of a man with money and influence twisting the world to his liking. Evelyn listens. She understands every tremor in that voice. She invites the girl inside. The fire is lit, bread is sliced. A place at the table is made. In that moment, the circle closes. Not with spectacle, but with gentleness. The life Evelyn once needed has now become the life she can offer others. The frontier remains harsh. Danger still prowls the edges of every settlement. Power still leans heavily on those without it. But there are places, quiet places, where truth is allowed to stand upright without apology. And one of those places sits halfway up a mountain, warmed by a fire that never quite goes out. At night, Evelyn sometimes steps outside, breathing in the crisp air, listening to the soft sounds of the wilderness. The stars spread endlessly overhead, cold and bright, as if honoring the courage it takes simply to live honestly. Samuel joins her, standing close without the need for words. They do not dream of escape anymore. They do not dream of being unseen. They dream only of living fully in the lives they have chosen, side by side, with dignity untouched and hearts unafraid. In the quiet, Evelyn understands the truth she once feared to speak, that power is not loud, and justice is not grand. Sometimes they are simply the steady presence of two people who refuse to abandon what was right, even when the world demanded their silence. And so, their story lingers across the western frontier, not as legend, but as reminder. Courage does not erase scars. Love does not erase hardship. But together, they make life something worth standing for. And that, Evelyn knows now, is freedom. The years continue their slow, patient turning, and the world around Evelyn and Samuel changes in small, almost unnoticeable ways. Trails shift. Towns rise. Names fade. But the cabin in the mountains remains, steady against the weather, like a promise the earth decided to keep. Those who once passed through remember the warmth of the fire, the quiet strength in Samuel's voice, the calm steadiness in Evelyn's eyes. They remember that truth can live quietly and still endure. On certain evenings, when the sky softens and the wind carries faint echoes through the trees, it almost feels as though the land itself remembers them too. Two lives joined not by chance, but by courage, by the refusal to bend beneath injustice, by a love that crossed every boundary placed in its way. And in that gentle remembering, the story continues, not as something finished, but as something that lives on in the steady beating of brave hearts everywhere. So let the image fade slowly now, the fire dimming, the stars brightening overhead, the mountains resting in deep, calm silence. Let the world grow soft and distant. Let the night fall kindly, and rest knowing that courage, once spoken, is never truly lost. End of article. Good night.